1. When I was in college, my roommate and I made a late decision to stay in town for the summer and take a couple of classes. Since we made the decision later than most, we couldn't stay in our current place and ended up connecting with friends of friends who wanted to sublease their apartment through the summer. Their community wasn't our first choice, but it was cheaper and short-term. The complex was further out from campus and pretty spread out. It wasn't known as a popular student housing option and was maybe a little sketchy. But college living arrangements can be questionable. The units were set up in 3-story buildings, 2 units per floor. Instead of a main entrance with an interior staircase, the stairs were outside, like a center stairwell. Every unit had a balcony, and oddly, the balcony doors didn't lock. Our new place was on the 2nd floor once you opened our balcony door. Our front door was straight ahead, and my roommate's bedroom window was to your right. Our building was pretty quiet. The other 2nd floor unit was empty, and we had occasionally seen tenants on the 1st floor, but never heard or saw anyone on the 3rd. One weekend, my roommate went home and I had the place to myself. I went to the movies with a friend who dropped me off at 11. She was in a rush and took off while I was still walking up to my building. It was dark, but the building was decently lit, so I wasn't speedwalking. I had just reached the stairs when I heard a male voice say, "Hey," from a balcony. Being a younger girl, I ignored it and didn't look up. "Hey!" This time the voice was insistent and frustrated, so I started walking as fast as I could up the stairs. I had just reached the 2nd floor landing when I heard a balcony door above me bang open, and someone with heavy footsteps come hurrying out. I yanked my balcony door open, slammed it, and promptly dropped my keys. I panicked, so getting my keys and unlocking my door felt like slow motion. I got the door unlocked and slammed it behind me, locking it again as fast as I could. I leaned against the door in kind of a dazed relief, and then heard my balcony door open. All of the lights in my place were off, and I was too scared to move around. I was afraid if I looked in the peephole, this guy would be staring right at me. So I pressed my ear against the door and listened. "Are you in there?" He must have said it right into the door because it was right in my ear. I jumped off the door like someone had fired a gun. Then the doorknob moved casually, like nothing was weird. Then a little bit harder. Then like someone was clearly rattling it. Then the whole doorframe shook. He started throwing himself against the door, kicking it, putting his weight into it. I started crying, but still hadn't moved much. I kind of couldn't believe what was happening. I kept thinking he left. He'd go crazy on the door, then stop, then start again. After a couple attempts, he talked into the door again. He wasn't yelling. It was just this low, hateful voice. "Open the fucking door, you little bitch." I really started crying hard when he started quietly laughing. It would go from pounding to silence, and then this little burst of laughter, like he couldn't hold it in. The way someone laughs when they're trying not to. He started kicking my roommate's window, and trying to yank that open next. I finally ran to my bedroom and called 911. This was a small place, so I could hear him while I waited. I made the operator promise me about 5 times that officers were there before I would come to the door. The cops had led him off the balcony, and one came inside to talk to me. The officer explained the man was claiming I was his girlfriend, and I had locked him out. He had said we had been drinking a lot, and I was drunk and confused. The cop was a little harsh before he realized I was sober and terrified. He asked me if I would look at the man and confirm he was a stranger, and I would take my word. I really didn't want to look this man in the eye, but agreed. The man was being held by another cop in my balcony doorway, totally calm. He was very tall and had long, dark hair to his shoulders. He was definitely older than a student. Maybe early to mid-30s, but normal looking. The way he looked at me, though, made my stomach drop. He had this expectant little smile on his face, like any minute now I was going to confirm his story. Obviously I did not, and darted back into my place. Apparently, after I went back inside, he started trying to fight off the cop, and they officially arrested him. The worst part was when they were walking him down the stairs, he started screaming, "I know she's alone in there. She's by herself in there." I don't know if he had been watching us or was just insane, but it was extremely disturbing. I didn't spend much time there for the rest of the summer. The apartment office let me know because of my situation and the state of his apartment. He had been evicted and I never saw him again. It upset me for a long time to think about what could have happened if he had been faster, or if I had been slower getting to my door. 2. When I was little, around 8 years old, I was on vacation with my parents and little sister in Montego Bay, Jamaica. After a long day of exploring the island, I believe we climbed the waterfall and visited a market that day. We were all going to spend the evening on the beach by the resort. My parents swam around a bit, and eventually went back to the sand to lay down and talk or read. Meanwhile, my sister, around 5 at the time, and I were building sandcastles at the edge of the water, where the wet sand was the perfect consistency for some sculpting. We sat there for hours, presumably. I remember the castle originally started off as a competition to see who could build a sand mountain the fastest, but afterwards we just started connecting the mountains with sand and just adding to the castle like kids do. We added moats, tiny bridges, flags made from leaves. Just about what you'd expect from a sandcastle, and honestly, it ended up being a pretty nice castle for a pair of kids. Anyways, my mom approached us and complimented the castle, taking a few pictures before telling us that we should head back to the resort now for food. Me and my sister immediately complained and whined because we were pretty spoiled at the time. So she eventually agreed to go find food with my dad at one of the nearby restaurants instead, and bring it back to us, which is something they do a lot. In turn, we promised to stay out of the water and not move from where we were playing. A few minutes after she left, a man walked up to us. He was probably around 40 years old, and had a bit of a beard, and no shirt, but honestly he just looked like a tourist to us. He watched us for about 30 seconds before saying, "Hey kids, it's a pretty cool castle." I immediately thanked him to be polite, and went back to the bridge I was trying to build, which kept collapsing from the small waves. "What are you doing there?" he asked. I was pretty annoyed because I was clearly busy, but also a little excited about the attention my masterpiece was getting. "I'm trying to build this bridge, but it won't work. And this part is supposed to have SpongeBob's face on it." It did not remotely resemble SpongeBob, looking back at it. "But I can't figure out how to do the nose yet because the sand won't stay up." Meanwhile, my sister sat there, casually scooping sand onto the castle, not really paying any attention to him. "Well, maybe when you guys are done, you can help me and my friends build one of these. We're over there," he said before gesturing behind him. I remember looking and not seeing anyone that seemed to be with him. The idea of an adult liking my castle made me feel really validated, so I didn't notice the oddness of the situation. Regardless, I agreed, but told him that he'd have to wait until I finished my own castle before we could help him. He seemed pretty annoyed by that, but agreed. 5 minutes later, he came back up to us and said, "Hey, my friends and I will have to go soon, so you guys need to hurry up and come with us so we can build it." My sister just said, "Wait, I didn't finish this yet," and he got kind of angry looking. Just at that moment, a younger woman, I'm guessing 25, jogged over from the other side, leaving her boyfriend or brother or whatever. She asked us, "Hey guys, how's it going?" At this point I was pretty excited, and just started explaining to her all of the things I was doing with my castle, pumped by the idea of multiple adults liking my work. She kept talking to me and my sister about the castle, and complimenting everything about it, and kept staring at the man without acknowledging him at all. He looked really angry and said, "Fine, I'll just go build it by myself," and stomped away. He didn't walk to any group of people, he just left the beach. The girl kept making small talk with us until the man was gone, and then she said bye and returned to her boyfriend or whatever, and I completely forgot about her. When my mom came back, I told her about how so many people thought the castle was really cool, and she just congratulated me and took some more pictures of it, and gave me a small talk about not talking to strangers. For all I know, that man could have just wanted to build a castle or something, and maybe that girl just came over because she actually appreciated the quality of that amazing sandcastle. Nonetheless, creepy beach guy, let's not meet. 3. What I should be doing. My college summer homework. What I'm going to do instead, tell you about my old friend, Nate from Scotland. Anyone who's ever been on the internet knows that internet creeps are dime a dozen. However, I felt like this particular internet creep deserved a post on LNM for the bizarre story he wove to try and gain my trust, along with a slew of other things. When I was 14, I met a girl online named Kelly. While we originally bonded over our mutual love of K-pop boy bands, we soon became friends who shared everything with each other. We sent each other PMs almost every day, talking about our families, school, funny videos we found online, all that jazz. Eventually, Kelly suggested that we make accounts on an instant chat site she had found, so we could more easily talk to each other. I agreed, and so it happened. All that backstory will be important later. I promise. The only reason I made the account on the site was to talk to Kelly, but I had no idea how to make my account private, and it wasn't long until I started getting messages from random people. I'm not sure how other instant messaging sites work, but on this one, whenever someone messaged you, it would open in a new tab in your chat box. So I was talking to Kelly and meanwhile trying to deal with all this sudden attention. My profile said I was female, and that I was 14. So a lot of the messages were from straight up pervs, and I, being the sensitive, polite girl I was, responded with "Nope, sorry," and closed the tab. However, there was a message from one guy that was pretty normal, Nate. It was something along the lines of, "Hey, I love AOM." For the record, any dialogue in this story is approximated. Obviously, I don't remember what anyone said, typed word for word. It took me a second to figure out what he meant, but then I realized he was referring to my profile, where I had mentioned that I liked the game Age of Mythology. In retrospect, I have no idea why I had filled out my profile so extensively. It had all my likes and hobbies, my first name, and my age. I guess I like to fill out profiles. Since his message was so benign, I felt obligated to respond. We properly introduced ourselves and talked for a bit. When I told Kelly I was talking to a guy in another tab, she was instantly wary. I guess she had better instincts than I did. For the record, Nate was claiming to be 23, almost 10 years older than me. "I can be like your confidant," he had told me. "You can tell me anything, even stuff you can't tell your parents." Now that I'm typing this all out, I'm realizing that he was trying to groom me. Unfortunately for him, my parents are awesome, and I had no desire to replace them with another adult. Things were pretty uninteresting at first, conversation-wise, but I remember that he was on all the time. Whenever I got on to talk to Kelly, he would be there. Late at night, early in the morning, during school hours, it didn't matter, he was there. The site even had a downloadable messenger that notified you whenever someone on your friends list got online. I wouldn't even be on the chat site, and he would send me messages the moment I got on the computer. He told me he was from Scotland, so that kind of explained the weird hours. But Scottish people sleep too, right? After a while, talking to him got old. We didn't have that much in common, and he started only asking about me and talking less and less about himself. He did tell me that he wanted to be in the circus, and that he struggled with depression, and that I was the only light in his life. Unfortunately, my bleeding heart broke at the thought of leaving him all alone, so I kept talking to him. Meanwhile, Kelly continued to be wary, but she kept it low-key, probably because she didn't want to offend me, as I was always insisting that he was a good guy. Then, things got weird. Well, weirder. Nate had already asked me to be his girlfriend multiple times, which I always declined, saying that the distance was too great. In reality, the thought of dating him kind of freaked me out. I should have realized at this point that I really shouldn't be talking to him, but I was a naive, barely teen, who had never taken an internet safety class. Once it became clear that I wasn't going to date him, he started telling me about his family. He told me he lived in a commune of sorts, with adoptive parents and a whole bunch of adoptive siblings. He told me he shared a room with an adoptive sister named Dana, who was in her 20s as well. Okay, cool, I guess. Then Dana started messaging me on his account. "You heartless bitch," was what she sent me. My stomach dropped. I had never been called a bitch before in my life. I replied with, "What?" I had no idea what was going on. She told me it was Dana, who Nate had never mentioned until the day before. She asked why I rejected her brother, that he was a great guy and I would be lucky to have him. I explained that I lived too far away and that I was too young for him. There was a long pause, then the message. "I'm so sorry about my sister." Nate had gotten back on. He apologized, saying that he had no idea why she did that he had yelled at her and defended me. Thoroughly weirded out, but still an idiot, I said it was okay, and I apologized again for not being able to date him. He said it was fine. Some more time passed. Nate started getting more invasive. He asked me what my bra size was, and when I said I didn't want to tell him, he kept pushing. "I'll tell you Dana's size if you tell me yours," he said. "It's not that big of a deal." But that only made it weirder. I told him no. He told me Dana's bra size. I said I still wouldn't tell him, and that I wanted him to stop asking about it. Please. After a bit more pushing, he did stop. Then he started saying he wanted to fly me out to Scotland. He kept talking about us meeting. He said he had told his entire family about me and that they loved me. And that they wanted to meet me too, at one point, Dana. At this point I was beginning to suspect they were the same person. Got on Nate's account again and apologized for blowing up at me. "I was just jealous," she told me. "I really like Nate, but all he ever talks about is you." Even though I knew they were adoptive siblings, her confession still gave me an uncomfortable knot in my stomach. I also noticed that Nate didn't say anything about those messages, even though they were in his account, and he could have easily seen them. When I told him my parents probably wouldn't let me go to Scotland by myself, Nate suggested that he move close to me. "Then the distance wouldn't matter, and we can be together." He asked where I live, so that he could move there. Getting more and more creeped out, I refused to tell him. I could tell he was getting frustrated, becoming more and more pushy. "At least send me a pic," he told me. I said I didn't give pictures of myself to people online, and he angrily told me that it was just one picture, it wasn't that big of a deal. "I'll send you one of me too," he said. I still said no, and he sent me a picture of himself. The guy in the photo was clearly an adult, but also very lanky with a mop of brown hair. I didn't really question whether it was him or not. "I sent you one," he told me. "Now you have to send me one too. It's only fair." Of course, pushover me thought that I really was somehow cheating him by not sending a pic. So without thinking, I agreed to send him one. Immediately after I sent the message, I panicked. I didn't want to send him a picture of myself. But now I had agreed to do just that. I felt trapped. So in my frantic rush to somehow fix the situation, I sent him a picture of a K-pop idol. A male K-pop idol, with long hair and soft features. It was a selfie, so it looked like a picture of just any regular person. As soon as I sent it to him, with some feeble "here it is" message, I started panicking again, worried that he would somehow recognize the guy and get mad at me. "Oh, P," he responded, "you're the most beautiful girl I've ever seen." I wish I could say the story ended there. But he immediately began begging me to be his girlfriend. I told him, once again, that I was sorry but I couldn't. Then he got really quiet. Then he started sending a bunch of ellipses, which basically gives you no choice but to ask what's wrong. He said he wasn't sure if life was worth living anymore, if he couldn't get a girl as beautiful as me to date him. He said that maybe he should just end it all and stop being a bother to everyone. At this point, I'm freaking out, still ignorant as ever. I had no idea this was a classic form of manipulation, and I genuinely thought someone was about to kill himself because I had sent him a picture of a pretty boy. I sent him a really long, impassioned speech about how great life is, and that he shouldn't give up. And that even though we couldn't date, I was glad to have met him. I'm not sure if it actually moved him or not, but he said that I had changed his view on the world, and dropped the subject. After that debacle, Nate changed his tactics. He started claiming that he had feelings for Dana. Dana got on once more and asked me if I was sure I didn't want to date her brother, and when I said that yes, I was very sure, she said, "So you don't care if I go after him?" And I said I definitely didn't. Our contact started dying after that. Needless to say, I was relieved. Even though Nate made me incredibly uncomfortable, I also felt attached to him, simply because we had been talking for so long. I didn't have the heart to tell him myself that I didn't want to talk to him anymore. But then, after several weeks of not talking, Nate sent me a message. "Dana is pregnant." Wow. Okay. We continued not to talk much, but he would occasionally send me updates about the baby. Then, after not talking for months, he randomly started messaging me again. I tried to be polite and asked how he was doing, and he told me the baby had been born. I vaguely wondered if it had really been 9 months since we last talked, but, whatever. "We named it after you." Why? Why? Why was his entire family so obsessed with me? They didn't even know me. Soon after, he told me his younger brother, who was my age, wanted to talk to me. It seemed to be a last-ditch effort to rope me back in, which by this point I saw straight through. His younger brother flirted with me a bit on his account, and when I didn't take the bait, Nate got back on and apologized for his brother. And so it happens, Kelly was also on at the time. Again, the only reason I used the site at all was to talk to her. In a separate tab, I told her that he was making me seriously uncomfortable, and I wasn't sure what to do. She told me to block him because she's a rational person with a backbone, but I was scared he'd get mad if I did. At this point, Dana had gotten on in the other chat tab, and was telling me more about her baby daughter, explaining why they chose my name. Kelly was quiet for a while, then came back with, "Okay, I took care of it." Dana had fallen silent. I asked Kelly what she had done. She copy and pasted the message she had sent Nate's account. I can't remember it in great detail, but it was something along the lines of, "Look, you're making my friend seriously uncomfortable. You're crossing all the lines, and you need to back off." At first, I was a bit upset. I hadn't asked her to do that for me, and I was scared Nate or Dana or whoever would start railing on me. However, all Dana sent me was, "Do we really make you uncomfortable?" Feigning ignorance, I asked her what she was talking about. "I think if you want to talk to us again, you'll have to be the one who initiates the conversation." I replied with, okay. And then they logged off, and it was done. I never heard from Nate or Dana or any member of that weird family again. So, I'm really bad at ending things. So I'll just say that, Kelly, you are my hero. Let's definitely meet someday. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 117. Just to clear up any confusion, yes, we Scottish people do in fact sleep. I'm a bit of a night owl myself, which some of my fellow Scots think is weird. I try and inform them that I'm probably awake about the same amount of time as they are, just on a different schedule. But yeah, we do sleep, which is actually what I'm going to go do in about half an hour, because, oh dear, it's very, very late. I got sidetracked with a bit of work there, and, well, I tend to tell myself I'm going to do 1 or 2 stories just to make the workload a little lighter when I wake up next day, but I invariably end up recording about 2 or 3 videos worth of stories. I still have to edit them the next day and make the actual videos, but it does save me quite a bit of time in the long run. You know, reading that last story there and listening to it back, of course, it just reminds me of why I don't use instant messengers anymore. Apart from the fact that there is no, Windows Messenger or MSN as I kept calling it, and I hate Skype. But apart from that, there was just so many bloody weird people around. I remember I ended up chatting to one weird person, that allegedly a girl, and she'd kept telling me about how awful her life was and all the bad things that had happened to her, and initially I believed her because I was a trusting person back then, and eventually over time I came wise to the ways of the internet, so as it were, and I kind of realised that she, if even she was a she, was full of shit. But she'd keep messaging me randomly, sometimes months would go by, and eventually I just, lost my temper with all the nonsense and that, and just cut off communication entirely, and that was many, many years ago. Strange, damaged people. Ah, well, it's not to say I didn't speak to some very nice people on there as well. I did have some nice people on there. There was a lovely young lady in Guam. I won't say anybody's names. And there was Mac. That wasn't his real name. That was an acronym. It took me ages to work out. It was actually just the letters of his name joined together. And I think he actually still follows me on Facebook. And there was a bunch of other people as well. And God, I can't even remember most of them. I wish there was a way to get my list of MSN or Windows Live contacts, but I can't think of any way to find it again, just so I can see who's on there. But that's probably completely gone now. Oh well, I guess that'll do it for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.